This Friday, April the 12th at 7 p.m. at the Crescent Arts Center, there will be a show happening that pays tribute to one of the major composers of the Great American Songbook. Called You're the Top, the show on Friday will put the songs of Cole Porter front and center. With more than 300 songs in the Porter catalog, there is a deep well of Porter tunes to choose from, some of his best-known ones being I Get a Kick Out of You, I've Got You Under My Skin, My Heart Belongs to Daddy, Begin to Begin, and of course, You're the Top. The show will feature three great singers, Amber Epp, Zachary Rushing, and Annie Avery, and will also feature jazz pianists Grant Simpson and Will Bonnis. And joining me here in the Classic 107 studio, I am joined by pianist Grant Simpson and singer and pianist Annie Avery. Hello to you both.
Hello.
Hello.
I first want to talk about how the show came together. Can you talk about that? And I understand Jazz Yukon played a role in this gig coming together. Is that right?
Yep, that's right. So I moved here from the Yukon about 6 years ago. And I was up there for 40 some odd years.
Wow.
And Annie and I, of course, have been longtime pals up there. And we have a duo called Two Piano Tornado. We tour all over the place playing two pianos and doing we sing and play and do ragtime stuff. And so when I moved here, Duncan, who is the president of Jazz Yukon, he likes to keep investing in the people that he's been supporting, and Annie and I were both we worked to help get Jazz Yukon off the ground back in the early days. I think I did the first concert that they produced there when they started this jazz series, so we go way back. So Duncan has always been real supportive, not only in the Yukon but artists outside of the Yukon, and so. I said he wanted Annie and I to do something, and I thought it would be great to team up with a couple of Winnipeg people, and I came up with the Cole Porter idea. I just love him. About every decade I do a Cole Porter show, so that's what this is.
Oh, fantastic. And from what I understand, there's also a partnership with the Crescent Arts Center, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I do a lot of work with the Crescent Arts Center. I have a lot of programs that I do through there. We have a swing dance thing. We do a Café de Voix, which is working with singers. And so we have a few programs. So the Crescent Arts Center has also been real supportive in these things. So, basically I just booked a church to do this show, but then, of course, they jump in with both feet and both hands and really help to team up. They're real great support also.
And Annie, is this your first time being in Winnipeg and performing?
No, I actually grew up in Manitoba.
Okay.
However, I've been involved in some of the church's endeavors at the Crescent Arts Center, and it's a marvelous to play. It's the wooden environment, energy that's in that whole building, no matter what room you're in, is full of incredible energy.
Grant, from what I understand, popular music from the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and jazz in general is part of your DNA. You've grown up with the music literally all around you. I was on your website. What is it about Cole Porter's songs that you find so fascinating? Can you talk about your earliest memories of hearing Porter's music?
Yeah, well, early on, probably my mom was a big musical fan. And so she would take us to the movies when the musicals were there, but also, I remember seeing Can Can, which is a Cole Porter musical. Yeah. And I asked her, I didn't know anything about Toulouse-Lautrec and everything. And so, she went out and got a Toulouse-Lautrec book and gave it to me. So that's how I first started, through Cole Porter and learning all those songs. And then I ended up, when I was 18, I got hired to go up to the Yukon to play for Can Can dancers, which I did for the next 40 years. But that was my first memory. But, I studied jazz and classical in college after I finished high school.
In Nanaimo, right?
In Nanaimo at Malaspina. And so in classical, of course, you learn to rip apart things like Bach fugues and inventions and things. And I just applied the same thing to show tunes. And Cole Porter was I started to really analyze what was going on in these songs. Why was Gershwin different than Porter? Why, all that kind of stuff. And I got into it. By the time I was 20, I was a geek. And I carried around Alec Wilder's book called American Popular Song, which is, I think he analyzes 700 popular songs from the Great American Songbook, and they're like note by note, lyric by lyric, chord by chord, and I loved it right from the beginning. So that's how I got into it, and I really started to appreciate how Cole Porter, like, not only is he's a wonderful lyricist, and so he's really funny, tongue-in-cheek, just real sophisticated approach to lyric writing. But he kind of has an unorthodox way of writing music. And I think it's very melodic based. Like if the melody goes here, he'll find a chord that fits it. He doesn't really care. If it's the chord that should go there, he finds a chord that fits. And then so, all of a sudden his songs will just take a twist and a turn. You go, why is he playing a B minor there? Like that doesn't make sense. And it takes a while to sort of figure out what he's doing. Lots of times it has to do with counterpoint. And lots of times it just has to do with his own particular flair with chords. Like Annie says, a lyric might say the word minor, and you can bet Cole Porter's going to whap a minor chord there, even if it doesn't fit. It's just the way it is.
And Annie, how about you? What are your experiences of Cole Porter's music?
Well, I'd have to say I didn't do the deep dive till maybe, starting a few years ago. I think Night and Day is one of the first things that we all learn how to play. But I would have to just add, with Cole Porter being the guy that did both lyrics and music, and how the lyrics drove the music, unlike some of our writing teams that we're famous for in those times. And you talk about his own little sense of humor is absolutely and his setups, his verses. Sometimes you can't imagine why it has anything to do with the tune, but it's just bizarrely funny. And with incredible rhymes. This melody, no, just a second. This verse I've started seems to me the tin pantithesis of melody. I mean, who would put that in a song?
Cole Porter would. Grant, I was doing quite a bit of reading about you. You were a student of Jerry Bryant and Elmer Gill, and one of the things I know that you learned from them was learning about voicings and learning about the chords, and I'm talking about when you're playing Cole Porter tunes, like say you're playing I Get a Kick Out of You, do the chord voicings change for you every time you play the tune, or?
Well, I work them. For one, I'd like to throw into a super influential teacher of mine was Louise Rose. And Louise Rose is still working all the time. So is Jerry and Mike Taylor too. But Louise had a profound influence on me in the way that you reharmonize tunes. She's the one who really took me through that. Now, Louise studied 2 years with Duke Ellington, studied arranging with Duke Ellington, and 2 years studying piano with Oscar Peterson. So she's no slouch when it comes to this stuff, and she was always way above my head, but she took me down these journeys to reharmonize some things. Now, Cole Porter is interesting. Some tunes are easy to reharmonize. You can take something like a tune like All of Me, and it's pretty easy to reharmonize that tune. Really standard chord changes that you can predictable in the directions they're going for the most part. Cole Porter's not like that. So you almost have to read 4 or 5 bars in advance to find out what Cole Porter's doing.
Right.
Because he's on a journey to get there, and he goes his own way. So then, if you're going to reharmonize, lots of times it's just like, oh, so that's why he did that. And it just becomes more clear what he did. So I don't have to do anything different. It's just that I understand what he did now, and so I can play it with more conviction, or, I might change the way it's, my approach to it. But some tunes are, like, even if you look at something like Night and Day, really standard chord progression in the first half, and then it jumps into E flat in the middle. If it's in the key of C, it jumps up, jumps abruptly into a new key. And it's fantastic. You don't have to do anything else with that. It's fantastic. So a lot of his stuff is like that. It's just so harmonically sophisticated and cool that there's some things. I might put in some passing chords going from one thing to another one, but I I don't reharmonize as much as I do with other standard tunes.
Yeah.
Can I just
Yeah,
add
Annie,
something?
yeah.
I think if you're playing only as a solo piano player, for the singer, you have opportunity to decorate harmonically and melodically, especially things that will go with the lyrics.
Right, yeah, yeah.
That's a bit of a treat.
Sort of punctuate the lyrics. Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
My understanding is that the singers on the program have picked 4 tunes that each of them is going to be singing. How exactly is that going to work? I know Zachary Rushing is going to be accompanied by Will Bonis. Grant, are you going to be accompanying Annie? Can you talk about?
No, I play and sing on it.
So it's literally 4 separate acts. Can you talk about those 4 separate acts?
Yeah. Annie and I normally play together, so this is kind of a bit strange for us because we rely on each other. We've been touring now for a decade and done a lot of touring. So it's a little bit weird to be playing without another person on the piano with us. So, but it'll be fun. So we've each, I just told everybody, I said, how about if we all pick 4 tunes and you bring those to I've never heard Amber play live, and I've never heard Zachary sing live, and I've heard Will play once when he played with Jocelyn.
Good. Yeah.
But that's the only time I've heard him, and I've heard his CDs, of course. He's a brilliant guy. And Amber, of course, she has a whole Latin thing going. I've heard her stuff online, and she's wonderful. I love what she does. So I'm really interested to see what she brings to the table. But, the feeling of this concert is 4 people hanging out in a living room playing for each other.
Yeah, excellent.
And so, we're going to have that kind of setting on stage, and the grand piano is going to be on stage, and we'll just go up and take turns playing a couple tunes each in each set.
Nice.
Owen Clark is going to MC for us, so
Perfect.
It doesn't get any better than that. I mean, Owen's been around a
Yeah.
long time. He knows all the
Yeah.
stuff. Right away, he started coming up with ideas on, who's doing what tunes, and he was going to, you can tell he'll come to the table with interesting things. He's a brilliant guy. So, Zachary, I've just heard some amazing things about his voice,
Yeah, it's a good singer.
and I can't wait to hear him. I love Annie's playing. Anything I can do with Annie, I'll do.
Yeah.
We click on stage, so it'll be fun.
Annie, do you want to talk about the tunes that you're going to be doing on Friday?
Well, I don't want to blow my surprise, but I'm doing. I was really influenced by that movie. It's Still Lovely that was made a Cole Porter story, and all the people that sang in it were not traditional, what we would call Cole Porter jazz singers. And it put a whole new twist on it. So I am going to do It's Still Lovely, one of my favorites.
And you're playing the piano and singing at the same time?
Yes.
And I was reading about you. Am I right? You're a qualified Orff teacher in the Yukon?
Yes, I'm retired from that now, yes. But yes, very much so.
That's fascinating. Grant, aside from playing piano, you also play accordion, guitar, musical saw, theremin. Is there going to be any of that happening on
No.
Friday night?
No. Although, I did play musical saw at our Duke Ellington show. I played Sophisticated Lady. And I love doing it. But this show, it actually started off, my initial idea was to do a solo piano concert, originally. And I thought the 4 of us, I was just going to get 4 pianists and just sort of do a Cole Porter, almost like, and I was interested in trying to team up with the Candlelight people. I thought that would be a really nice show. And, but then when I mentioned it to Annie, she was like, she knew she wanted to sing. And then I thought about it right away. And, Cole Porter writes beautiful music, but his lyrics are so profound. It just doesn't make sense,
It's this common theme that keeps coming up through the interview is the lyric, the importance of the lyrics.
And they're so funny and they're so great. So, it just went, and Amber did the same thing. She goes, well, I mean, I'll play, but do you mind if I sing? And then Zachary, I thought he also plays piano, but he told me, he said he'd rather not play for himself, and he's already playing with Will, so that works out beautifully. So that's how it sort of came together. I recorded one of the tunes I'm doing. I've got That Thing, which is kind of an obscure Cole Porter tune. I love it. I recorded it as a piano number, I don't know, in the early 2000s on a CD. So I've always loved that tune, but now I'm bringing it with all the lyrics. And it has 3 long verses.
And one of the things about Cole Porter, in particular regards, I was reading about him. He had quite a life, especially like when he was living in Europe.
Yeah.
I mean, he came from money and had some very lavish parties. He
Totally.
knew how to do it up, and by all accounts, he had a great sense of humor.
Well, and he was gay back in the 1920s.
Yeah, right.
And he was like many gay men at the time. He was married to a woman, and they just had that arrangement.
It was a marriage of convenience.
Yeah, and so he lived pretty wild life in Europe and in England. You know, there's tons of stories. I've read lots of books about it, and you know, there's a story that Truman Capote wanted to write about him, Noel Coward and Cole Porter all going out partying together, and then he thought at the end maybe I shouldn't.
So I mean, the lyrics in his songs come from life experience.
Totally,
that's for sure.
Well, he made a lot of extra verses for Anything Goes, according to what was going on socially at the time.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's about himself and his behavior, or sometimes it's about social-like behavior.
He also,
Amazing.
He also fell off his horse and became. Basically, I think he had trouble walking after that, and he really became a struggle. And he worked way harder because he was in pain a lot, and working was his refuge. You know, so his music also takes a bit of a turn during that period. If you look at it, you know, and there's some more anguish in his songs at times. I think, you know.
Annie and Grant, the show You're the Top sounds like it's going to be just fantastic. I'll wrap things up by asking, where can people get tickets?
Get tickets at the door at Crescent Fort Rouge United Church. That's the home of the Crescent Arts Center. Mm-hmm. And there's tickets at the door, and it's at 525 Wardlaw.
Right.
And there's lots of room. We have a really good crowd already, but the church is big, so there's lots of room.
And it starts at 7, right?
It starts at 7. So doors will be at 6:30. And, coming down. It's a beautiful place.
And just great. Sounds like a great opportunity to sit down and chill out some Cole Porter tunes. Sounds fantastic. Grant and Annie, this has just been so great having you in to talk about the show You're the Top this Friday night at the Crescent Arts Center at 7 p.m. Thanks for taking the time to stop by and talk to me today. It's been great.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Great.